Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Hoporenkv Native American podcast, where we discuss focused topics within Native American housing and self-determination. I'm Brooke Warrington, the Training and Development Specialist here at the Seminole Tribe of Florida's Native Learning Center. And today we're going to be talking about the Youth Police Initiative. Today we have special guest Jay Paris. He is Director of Prevention and Early Intervention Programs with the North American Family Institute. And we also have Julie Barrow DeBrito, and she is the Director of Training with the Youth Police Initiative. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Now, for our listeners, some of you are maybe thinking they sound kind of familiar. We have done an episode with them in the past. So I want to invite all of you to go ahead and check it out. They do a full breakdown of what their program is about, their philosophy, their vision, what they can bring to your community should you partner with the Youth Police Initiative. So I definitely encourage you to go and check that episode out. But also, could we maybe have a quick recap, guys? Just a little summary of what was discussed before.
Of course. In a nutshell, YPI, the Youth Police Initiative, is a 5-day-long intensive workshop that brings 12 to 15 young people and 5 to 8 police officers in the same room to break down stereotypes and build trust. So it's an opportunity for two groups of people who might not have the opportunity to interact in a non-crisis setting to have chances to listen to one another, to get to know each other on a personal level, humanize one another, and together identify challenges that they see in the relationship that currently exists between youth and police, and find solutions that start at the individual level. I would add as well that at YPI, we don't just think about, okay, what can we do in that room? We think about local capacity building and sustainability. So during our last episode with you all, we spoke about our Train the Trainer program, which is the program that we suggest to all the communities that we partner with. And this is the opportunity to work with us over the course of 10 to 12 months and not only implement 4 YPI programs together, but train a local group of up to 6 local individuals to become certified YPI trainers so that the program can continue sustainably for as long as the community wants it.
Jay, is there anything you would like to add?
I think Julie nailed it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right. So you guys are definitely kind of taking that teach a man to fish idea. I love that. That's really a beautiful philosophy to want to not only bring together people in a community, but set it up in a way where it can sustain itself. That's really a beautiful vision. Can I ask, can you guys kind of set the stage for us? Because there is a bit of a tenuous and tumultuous relationship going on between police and the public, especially at present. Can you guys speak a bit more to that?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because we started this program in 2003 in a police academy in Baltimore. And at that time, the issue was the fact that inner city Baltimore did not have a residency requirement for its police officers. So they were attracting a lot of veterans who were coming from rural areas of Maryland outside of Baltimore City. And they found that, and they were predominantly white, and the population of inner city Baltimore that they were patrolling was predominantly black and brown. So they were finding there was this communication gap and this cultural misunderstanding gap. And so we built the training to see if we could figure out how to cross that barrier and get people in touch, as Julie said, in a sort of a more humane, personal way. It's interesting when I think about the challenges today, now literally 20 years later, how a lot of them are the same, but I think there's been I think they've gained a tougher edge because, America's going through some tough divided times. And I think it's sort of like sometimes it feels to me like, police and kids in the neighborhoods they patrol are sort of at the tip of the arrow, that ultimately they have to figure out how to live together in a fair way, in a way that works for everybody, that keeps neighborhoods safe. Um, but it's hard. It's very hard. It's hard being a teenager these days. You know, the influences of today are very different than they were 20 years ago. Now, you know, social media is a huge factor. A lot of kids are determining their reality from what they see on, you know, on YouTube and other streaming formats. And likewise, you know, officers are, you know, they've sort of moved away in 20 years from walking the beat or bicycling the beat to, you know, to staying in the car. And so that makes personal relationships harder than ever to develop. And if ever there's a place where personal relationships really need to be developed, we think it's in these neighborhoods that, you know, are challenged by all the social problems that exist, you know, from poverty to race, to cultural differences, to religious differences, you know, all of the things that can seemingly divide us until we get to know each other. And so there's some urgency we're feeling around all this, and a real importance. The good news, I think, and Julie could certainly elaborate this, but you know, the good news is that as different as it is from 2003 to 2023, the program has continued to evolve, and I think it really works. I mean, I can't tell you, Brooke, how many times we go into a training room and we hear kids at the beginning saying, I don't like cops, I don't trust cops. And by the end, five sessions later, they're saying, well, maybe I don't like all cops, but these guys or these women are pretty cool. You know, it's like, they're okay. You know, we've connected, you know, we know each other's names, we know about each other, we know what we like and don't like, you know, what sports teams we like, what animals we like, what, you know, what things in school we have done well at or what we haven't done well at. And it's not just the cops learning about the kids. The kids learn a lot about the cops, and they find that they have amazing similarities. And that's the beginning of a relationship. And so that's still working. So that's very encouraging to us, and why I think we're so motivated to keep doing it.
That's incredible. Julie, is there anything you wanted to add also?
Yes, in a sense that Jay mentioned that the program is now celebrating 20 years of existence. And while the challenging dynamics between police officers and the public in general, and then between police officers and young people, teenagers in particular, while that dynamic has been challenging for extremely long, there are new realities that teenagers nowadays have to face, that I didn't have to face when I was a teenager, that Jay didn't have to face when he was a teenager, right? So we have taken the opportunity in 2020, when the pandemic started, to kind of have a look at our curriculum, transform it into an online program so that we could continue having those conversations at a time when police and residents relations were everywhere on social media, on the news. And once we went back to in-person programming, we took the opportunity to adapt the curriculum to new technologies that were now the realities of all of our young people who go to school. So we now have a curriculum that's truly interactive, using technologies that are like, you know, videos. We're using Kahoot games, a lot of things that we might not have in 2003, so that we can reflect the realities of our teenagers nowadays. And we always take our teenagers into consideration. So we always ask for feedback, like, what do you all think we should have, so that our program remains relevant, and we still achieve the same goals using different methods.
Oh, that's wonderful. I feel like people are always surprised that with teenagers, sometimes a lot of us try to guess, but if you ask them, they will tell you what they like and what they don't like. So it's so wonderful that you're actually getting their opinion, their input, you know, really continuing to foster that rapport and relationship. And I'm sure they love that, you know, getting to kind of have their name on it too, have their stamp of approval. That's fabulous. Are there any associations or groups that you're currently working with that you want to talk about?
Well, I can talk about one that we recently interacted with. police leaders actually have formed a number of associations depending on what their, particular interests or identities are. And in one group that we've been working with quite closely is called NOBLE, N-O-B-L-E, which stands for the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. They have a big annual conference every year. This year they asked us to make a presentation. We had a booth, so we had a chance to really meet with and talk to a lot of police executives, mostly who were Black, of course, but we had a whole team there. And we had a lot of interest. I mean, I think there were 15 departments that asked for more information, and that's great for us, because I think one of the challenges we have is that, in our humble opinion, we're a well-kept secret, and we've spread out mostly through word of mouth, mostly through a chief saying to another chief, or a police officer saying to another police officer, or a youth organization, same thing. But this is really working for us. So we've kind of grown more locally and regionally than nationally, because, as these people who get to know YPI share in their region or county or state even, we tend to do more in concentrated areas. But then once in a while, a chief will be hired across the country, or some event will happen. The Wall Street Journal, for instance, did an article on us, and that suddenly got the attention of some folks in Milwaukee. It's how actually Julie came to join us originally, and Kansas City, same thing. And we have a really good contact who's written a book about YPI. It's now a textbook. It's kind of a promising, strong model. She's living in California, so now we're starting to do work in California. We're doing a lot of work in Florida, as a matter of fact. But I think that that one of the ways that we can grow, and it's been effective, is to have these opportunities to explain our story to these larger associations that have memberships that will then hear us and get to know us. And so we're very actively trying to do as much of that as possible. I know, Julie, if you have any other examples that you want to talk about.
Yeah. So as we were talking about taking into consideration what our participants would like to see happen, a part of our curriculum at the end of our 5 days is to speak about what should happen next, right? And our partners always have like full freedom of creation when it comes to the follow-up that they want to see for the program, right? And Jay mentioned California. We implemented our first YPI in California, in Santa Monica, last June. And I recently received a message from our local coordinator, who's leading the efforts to bring YPI to Santa Monica. She, at the end of the program, had a very nice conversation, led a very nice conversation with all of our young people and officers who were there, saying like, okay, what would you like to do next? And she had a beautiful little wheel, like the Wheel of Fortune, where you could write different options. Everyone had the opportunity to put an option. And then we just turned the wheel, realized that everyone was actually really happy to vote on the options. And I recently got a picture of the entire YPI group going to Disneyland as their follow-up program. So not only do we have the partnership in California, but I think that speaking about our specific partnership and what our local teams are doing to transform their community is really important. Another example of partnership that we have that's quite new for YPI, but we think is extremely beneficial for the community we're serving, is the partnership that we're starting in Monroe County, New York. So as I was saying earlier, the Train the Trainer program that we have is focused on sustainability and local capacity building. Instead of having an outsider coming to implement the program, you have a trainer who comes to train local people. The only challenge that you can face as an organization is retention. People change jobs nowadays more than 20 years ago. People retire. So a challenge that an organization can face is losing the people that they had certified as YPI certified trainers. So we do have the opportunity to work over the course of several years with our partners. Now, of course, this is a greater initial financial investment, but it is the opportunity for our partners not only to have people who can implement YPIs, but to have in their organization master trainers, meaning trainers of trainers, so that if you have your group of 6 leaving for retirement, you can actually in-house build a new team of certified trainers. So our Monroe County partner, the Department of Probation, has decided to invest in YPI over the course of 3 years, which means that we're going to have a partnership with them for 3 years. And out of those 3 years working together, not only will they have up to 12 certified trainers, they will have up to 4 master trainers, which means that the county of Monroe in New York will have the capacity to implement YPIs, regardless of whether people retire, regardless of whether people change job, so that they can keep on serving their community.
Are there any other places that you're currently hoping to kind of develop YPI within? Like you've mentioned New York, you've mentioned California, Florida. Is there anywhere in the US that you're hoping to kind of branch out into right now?
No, it's appreciate you mentioning that. We're very honored to just be on this podcast with the, talking to members of the Seminole Tribe and maybe some others. But one thing that we've talked about for a long time is having a relationship that we could work with a Native American group. We'd love to do that. It's we know that the concerns of Native American tribes is a little different from what we will typically find in inner cities. I know sovereignty is is like a prime thing, and but we would be very excited to do that. And also in Florida, we're always looking for funding to engage police departments. We actually have some extra funding right now that we may have access to. We think we're going to have access to, so we could make this a very economically advantageous opportunity for a police department that was interested in jumping in on this in Florida. But Florida is becoming a real hub for us, actually.
As a Floridian, that is definitely good to hear.
Something Julie said reminded me of this, but I imagine that listeners out there, like most of us who haven't, unless you happen to have had interaction with police or teenagers, most people have a sort of an assumption about which group is in the right and which group is in the wrong, or our kids being sort of a pain in the butt these days, or our officers not being sensitive to kids' needs. There's a lot of opinion out there about all that. One thing that we're really, really adamant about is we are neutral. We're not pro-police. We're not pro-kids. We're pro-human beings. And so our attitude is to create a safe space that favors everybody in the room. So even though, our parent organization is a youth family oriented organization, we're very, very well versed on the challenges of growing up as a teenager today. And we're very, very well versed on the challenges of being a police officer, working 8-10 hour shifts day after day, seeing people at their toughest moments, and all the challenges that creates. So we know, we know what people are bringing into the room, and so our whole structure is about let's start getting comfortable with each other. Let's start hearing our stories, and so a lot of the way we get started when the police and kids finally do get together is really a sharing of personal stories. The kids have had a long time to practice it and be ready to do it. But then the officers are tasked with sharing some things about themselves, and that really elevates the whole thing. And that's when both sides find out that there's a lot they have in common, and a lot that they can find out about each other that's worth admiring, actually. And, you're asked often, what kids are you looking for to put in this program? There are, in my opinion, I tend to be a little more open about this than some, but I think this program can work with almost any kid. I mean, we've done kids in a lockup, we've done kids on probation, we've worked with kids in alternative schools where kids have been suspended or expelled. We've also worked with, just kids hanging out on the corner, kids who are in the Boys and Girls Clubs, kids who probably are struggling somewhat, or at least with authority or with police, perhaps. But and we do two kind of age groups. We do younger teens, 13 to 15, typically, if we're going to do that. We don't really like to mix 13, 14-year-olds with 17, 18-year-olds, but we've also done a lot of work with 15, 16 to 18-year-olds. We've worked with all girls and all police officers. Julie did a beautiful training just recently with that, and it was incredibly powerful. We've done co-ed trainings. We've done all boys. So and then on the police side, this has been a hot debate. Should you get officers that want to do this, or should you just take officers who are on the beat? I like taking officers on the beat. We don't want to force anybody into this, but there are a lot of officers who come in not sure they really want to be there. They're told to be there. They don't really even know what they're getting into. And some of those are our greatest success stories. And before we're done, I think Julie and I could both share a story or two about some things that it's kind of the miracles that we've seen happen in these trainings. I think people always love stories. But that's an important point. I mean, I think people need to know that, this training works. And again, this is through a lot of trial and error, and, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of kids and officers we put through this to get to this point where we're very confident that give us 15 kids, give us beat officers who are patrolling those neighborhoods. A lot of really positive will come out of it. So anything you want to add to that, Julie?
I was hoping to highlight a few of our local partners and some of the efforts that they've pushed forward, and especially because we're mentioning the fact that we are about to start our work in Florida with several locations going through our Train the Trainer program. I want to highlight the effort that the New York teams individually have put forward and the consequences for the networks within the state. So we have had several local teams working out of New York, some of them since 2005, 2006. However, they have tend to work alone within their own community, implementing YPI, doing a lot of transformative work, transforming the vision that the community might have of police and transforming the vision that police officer might have when it comes to young people. But to push it to the next level, you want to have connection between those individual teams within a state so that they can share their ideas, they can learn from other teams, they can support one another when it comes to their follow-up programming. And this has happened finally for the first time within New York State. So our Spring Valley team, our Binghamton, Johnson City team, our Rockland team, and our Poughkeepsie team got together, and hosted by the Binghamton team, we had our first YPI New York State conference. So over 40 young people coming from several areas of New York got together, stayed on campus at the University of Binghamton, engaged in a lot of team building activities, had a lot of interesting presentations on opportunities to go to university, on leadership altogether. What does it mean to be a leader? And just getting to know other young people who went through YPI. And this is ultimately a vision that we have at YPI, is not only empower our local team to implement the program, but create a network of support between our teams so that they don't feel that they are alone doing this work and implementing this program. Of course, we're here to help them. But the next step is to have several teams that are geographically pretty close, working together, supporting one another, creating follow-up programming that are not solely on their own shoulder, but just creating that state-level vision of what police and youth relations can look like. So I wanted to highlight this because this happened in June, July this year for the first time. Our local team at Binghamton, Johnson City was absolutely fantastic. Everyone who participated from our different New York location was really brilliant. And it was such a pleasure for us to see this happen, because this is when truly transformational efforts are seen. So I wanted to highlight that, and it would be very interesting to see this happen in Florida as well. You never know.
That sounds like a really powerful experience for everybody involved. Wow. Was there anything else you guys wanted to add, or go ahead?
Yes, I forgot you mentioned the website. So in case you want to contact us and for some reason you can't find Jay's email, please go on our website, ypiworld.org. You're going to have a place at the very bottom of any page that is a contact us button, and we'll respond to you. Anyone can reach out to us. You can be a police department. It can be a sheriff's office. It can be a local school that wants to implement something at the school district. We would love to start a conversation with you all. So website, ypiworld.org.
Okay, fantastic. And I'll be sure to include that in our episode description, along with both Julie and Jay's email, so that you can reach out if you want to find out more information, if you want to possibly foster a partnership with them, anything like that. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add before we say goodbye?
I just would like to tell one story.
I'd love that.
So in almost every YPI, there's something that happens that we don't expect, and it's usually kind of magical. It's it's what happens when people get in a relationship and they get a chance to go deeper. And because both police and these young people who are in our trainings are often in the midst of a fair amount of drama, the magic can be very dramatic. And so there was a YPI that we were doing not too long ago. There was a young woman, a girl about, I don't know, she might have been 16 years old, who was pretty quiet. She was sort of didn't volunteer to say much. And, we were kind of watching this and just encouraging her to participate. And she wasn't resisting hard, but she just, seemed a bit removed. And I think, that trust was slower for her to develop. Well, it turns out that there was an officer in the room who had been in an arrest situation where he'd had to shoot his gun, fire his weapon, and he seriously injured somebody. And even though it was completely legitimate and necessary for him to do that to protect everybody in this, it was in a 7-Eleven store actually. It was traumatic for him, and he'd been pretty quiet too. And at one point, he said, I've been debating for a day whether to talk about this, but you probably noticed I haven't said too much to him, so now I'm going to share it. And I think even his colleagues, the other police officer in the room, were kind of startled, because this, he was clearly going to reveal something pretty personal. He said, I have to tell you that about 6 months ago, I was involved in this shootout, and, bullets were coming at me. I had to fire back. I shot and seriously injured this man. I am still struggling with this. He said, when I go home after my shift, I have to go into my basement, turn out all the lights, and sit there for half an hour and calm myself down before I see my wife or kids. Every single shift, I do this, and it's hard. And and there was just silence in the room. I think the kids were stunned that he was being so vulnerable and open. The other officers were surprised, but this is often what happens, in the room when space gets safe like this. This young girl who'd been so quiet, in a very kind of quiet voice, said, well, I shot somebody once. And of course, everybody, came to the edge of their seat and said, well, do you, the trainer actually said, I was the trainer, so I know I can tell you what I said. I said, well, is it something you'd like to talk about, or would you rather not talk about it? She said, she hesitated, and then she said, well, yeah, I'd like to tell the story. She told the story of she was on the stoop in front of her apartment. This is in Kansas City, and a man who probably was either inebriated or had taken, a lot of drugs, was coming up the street kind of mumbling to himself. And when he got to this girl's stoop, he pulled out a knife, a big knife, and, and started threatening her. And she ran inside. She didn't get a chance to lock the door, and he followed her in. And her mother heard the yelling and came downstairs and said, what are you doing in here? You need to leave. And he began waving the knife around, and the daughter was petrified that he was going to stab her mother. So she ran up. She knew where there was a gun and there was ammunition. She put the ammunition, the gun came down. And as the man took a swipe at her mother, she fired the weapon and it went into the man's neck. It didn't kill him, but he was down. And an ambulance came. And when the police arrived, they began, from her memory of this, she said, they started yelling at me like this was my fault. And it wasn't my fault. I was just defending, and no one really heard me. And as she was saying this, she began to shake, and tears were streaming down her face. And I looked over, and this officer who had shot somebody had tears coming down his face, and he ran over to her and he put his arm around her, and there they were crying. And then the other officers came over and they all kind of surrounded her. Some of the kids came over, and this is a very emotional, incredibly emotional scene. And, the officer who had been involved in this shooting said, it's okay. You can keep talking, get it off your chest. It's okay. Keep talking. And so she talked about it, and the other officer was saying, you shouldn't have been yelled at. We're really sorry that happened. The whole room just shifted, just lightened up. And those two became so close through the course of that training. When it was time to pair up, and, we always serve pizza or something like that, and break bread together and do some exercises during that period of eating. They were right there next to each other, and they were telling stories to each other. And it was really just a complete transformation, I think, very healthy for both. And they both said that at the very end of the training, when they were sort of commenting on the experience, how this had really changed them and the way they related to their own trauma. So that's, that's a dramatic story. It doesn't happen like that every time, but there are always things. I mean, Julie, I think of that amazing story of that, the young man who, composed beats, and the officer who rapped, and they found each other. And, I don't know if you want to just tell that story quickly, but I mean, it's another kind of story too.
Yes, and we have a nice video available if anyone is interested, so have a look at our website as well. It was during our time implementing YPIs online, and one of the things that we do during our YPI programs is to have activities to get to know each other on a personal level. We don't need to dig very deep, like what is your favorite type of music? What do you do? What are 3 things that are interesting or that are surprising about you? So during one of those small conversations, one of our young person mentioned that he liked music and he liked creating music. Well, he was paired up with an officer who happens to sing a lot in his free time. So they started talking about it, our young person played his beat that he was working on to everyone. And the officer said, like, we should try and do something together. They actually made it happen. YPI is a 5-day-long program, so it doesn't give you a lot of time to create something together, right? So the officers started working on that beat, was inspired by that beat, wrote some lyrics. And then for our online graduation, we had a viable YPI song to share with everyone, lyrics that were created by our officers, music that was created by our participant. And then we followed up with a beautiful interview of our young person and our officers to kind of explain their process and how it felt to create something together. And that started because we took 2 seconds to speak about what type of music do you like. And it changes, it sounds so trivial, but it can make such a big difference because it's very easy to forget that people are human when we stop speaking about individuals and start speaking about groups of people. Groups of people don't like music. Individual will have musical taste, right? So it's really important to have that. And then to make sure as well that we give the freedom to our participants to kind of take those small conversations where they want to go, right? Like we have an activity that's focused on public speaking. And we ask our participants to talk about themselves. And of course, we have some like tools that can help our young people, our officers organize their thoughts, right? And in our all girls YPI, so only young ladies participant, only women officers participant, and only women trainers. One of our young lady asked me, is that okay if I don't follow like this specific pattern to speak about myself? And I'm like, of course, you're speaking about yourself. You're the expert. You do whatever you want to do, my friend. And that young participant created an amazing spoken word about herself and her view on police and youth relation and her view on the realities that she was experiencing. And I can tell you, when she gave her presentation, there weren't a lot of dry eyes in the room. And we were joined by 11 police officers. Our participant was invited to share her presentation again during graduation in front of the mayor and other important community stakeholders. And again, not a lot of dry eyes. So those moments really show you the impact that starting a conversation can have. A conversation that's not based on shouting at one another, but listening to each other so that we can understand where the other one is coming from. And that doesn't always mean agreeing, but that means taking the time to listen and feeling heard.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing those special stories. You know, it sounds like you guys have really created, you know, like you were calling it the safe space, Jay, just like a beautiful container where people are able to step outside of, you know, their stereotypes, their titles, uniforms in some case, and, you know, just be real with one another. That's really special. I hope that you guys are able to make more and more partnerships in the future so that more communities can experience that, as everybody just wants to be understood at the end of the day, whether you're an adult or a teenager, you know, everything in between. So I must commend you guys on your program because it's really powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for having us, Brooke. It's always
absolutely
great to share our stories. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the time you to come on and talk to us today. Just one more time, I know we kind of briefly mentioned it before, but since most of our listeners are living in Indian country and members of tribal communities, if they were wanting to learn more about your program, learn more about your philosophy, perhaps even partnership with you guys, have some of your resources and trainings, you know, foster that kind of a relationship, where could they learn more about you? Of course, your email addresses I'll put in the episode description, but where else could they go?
So in case you want to learn more about YPI, you want to reach out to us and start a conversation, please go to our website, ypiworld.org. And on any page that you use, you will have a contact us place at the very end, at the bottom of the page. Please please send us an email, and we'll be happy to start a conversation. And we are happy to speak with individuals. We're happy to speak with police departments. It can come from the sheriff's office. It can be a school district, a school, a group of parents, a group of young people who want to change their community. You know, a nonprofit that's focused on social justice. We are more than happy to partner with anyone who wants to transform the landscape of police and youth relations.
Wonderful. All right, that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much again, Julie and Jay, for joining us. We hope that everything you guys learned today about the Youth Police Initiative was very valuable, that you can maybe follow up, learn some more information, and maybe even bring that kind of partnership to your community. If you enjoy the show, please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. You can also visit our website at nativelearningcenter.com to find information on our upcoming webinars and virtual trainings. And again, I will be linking the YPI website along with their emails here in our episode description so that you can find out more. And be sure to come back here for more content. Until then, I'm Brooke Warrington, and I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thank you.